is Medicircle and you're watching Rendezvous with Smita Kumar. Today we have with us Varad Rajan Krishna, Managing Director at Induct AS Asia MENA and co-founder of 100 Open Startups, which is a movement that connects startups, entrepreneurs, scientists with the innovation strategy of large companies looking for solutions and opportunities for the challenges of the society and the market. As one of the board of directors of WinAMR, he drives the overall strategy for growth of the company. Hi, Varad. Welcome to Medicircle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I look forward to sharing my views and experiences so that the people that you are viewing it can benefit from it. Thank you.
So to begin with, I have a question for you. Like, you have a career spanning over 25 years and are an executive turned serial techpreneur and angel investor. So how has the journey of 2.5 decades been?
Great question. So it has been a great journey so far. So let me first start by saying, like most of us, right, all of us study in either medicine or engineering, and then we go to work for somebody, right? So it was also natural because those times there wasn't so much awareness about entrepreneurship. So it was like you can say everybody was looking for a job, so to say, right? So like the end in your education was to find a good job.
Good job.
The purpose and the objective was to find a job.
True.
And nobody looked at creating something or building something, right? It never happened like that. So in my case also, it happened the same way, that I had to, for social pressures and all that you can think of, that there is no way that, you're going to start something, right? And you had no clue about all this. So I'm just looking back at that 25 years ago. So the things have changed now, so much awareness. So I just went to work for a large corporation and then work with them in certain areas, gain that expertise, knowledge. Then I set up my own organization and then build it up into a 900 people company. That was my first startup. Oh. And it was in engineering services. After that, we listed this in the Bombay Stock Exchange, 50 times oversubscribed. And in 2 years later, I sold this company. And thereafter, I went through a series of such startups and then selling to a large company or merging with it, finding an exit, etc. So I went through these kind of journeys. And so when you look at the experiences, right, in the case of working for the big companies as an employee, you don't have to worry about your salary. You don't have to worry about what's going to be the next thing that's going to happen to you, because everything is taken care by the company, right? It's like a kind of a hedge against all, it's a kind of an insurance against all kinds of, it's a financial, you can call it as insecurities, right? So it's like that. Whereas when you move into an entrepreneurial role, it was totally different, right? Because you have to do everything, right from being a janitor to the CEO, you have to do everything. And at the end of it, your payday doesn't come. It's like a delayed gratification, because many times, because you're depending on some investor or, you're depending on some customer's revenue, and there is, there is nobody to fund you, right? Like the way you used to work for a company, somebody else will pay for your salary, right? So it was like, you can discover later that as a CFO or, certain people who are head of finance in the company, their role was to borrow money if the company didn't have money to pay your salaries. So this is how, many companies work, right? And in the case of an entrepreneur, you have to do everything on your own. So if, for example, let's say, you have to pay next month's salary, you have to start planning now itself, how it's going to come and, where it's going to come, etc. And you can't tell an excuse to your employee that, I don't have revenues, I don't have, any funding. You cannot say that, because it's the work starts with you and stops with you. So it is like that, right? So this is the biggest challenge, right? When you compare that life and this life. And later I've learned this has also got a scientific explanation. That is interesting, I need to tell you. So the corporate way of life, or you're working for somebody, it's called as causal approach. Causal as in you have a structured process to do everything, there's a way to do it, etc. Whereas when you go to start your own, it's called effectual approach, which means you have to do everything. There is no procedure, no process. You just, if there is anything at all, you need to break it down, right? And you don't want to create structures that is going to delay decisions. So that is a complete, like 180-degree shift between what's called the causal and the effectual. Yes. And this is a very important learning that I learned later, that that's what an entrepreneur's life is all about.
True. Tell us more about your, 100 open startups. What is it and how are you associated with it?
So good question. Again, so this is like, if you see in the last company that I listed in the Oslo Stock Exchange, that you see behind my picture is the Oslo Stock Exchange when we listed it in 2016. And here there's a background is that this is an open innovation company. We were building open innovation communities across sectors. To begin with, it was healthcare. Then we went into public systems, education, large enterprises, and humanitarian causes, right? So these are the sectors we were addressing. And one of the communities that we built in the open innovation communities was to connect startups and researchers and scientists with large corporations and SMEs. So that was something we started in 2007 under Dr. Henry Chesbrough, who teaches at the Haas School of Business, UC Berkeley. With his support, we started it, and he was the evangelist. Those were early times when the word startup was not even well defined. And so I'm just talking about the times when we were going about and talking to other organizations to build their own, pretty much like the way you talked about, your startup that you created. We wanted to create an ecosystem for every sector. So it will be interesting for you to know that one of the first open innovation communities we created is for healthcare. Oh. And since this is an interview, right, on healthcare, so I thought it'll be very pertinent for you to know. What we did was, first we go to a hospital, So I remember the first one we went to was Aalborg in Denmark. And so let us say they had about 50,000 employees at the time. And so we asked them the questions like, what you do when you have ideas coming from different employees. So this is, the simple question, right? So if many organizations used to have something called the suggestion box. Yeah. So you can put your idea there and somebody will review it. And if it's worth, then, they will implement it. And probably you may get a good award as well, right? If, good recognition, if your idea is really good. Yes. So this is the old way of doing it, right? So imagine you set up the whole thing like an electronic system, in a digital system where you can run this kind of a challenge, a problem statement like, how to increase sales, or how to bring new customers, or how to satisfy customers, how to motivate employees, right? So you can run many challenges within the organization, and the ideas can come from individuals that are working in the organization, and the scorecard and system that is set there, the decision-making process, you can actually find out the best 5 ideas that are implementable, and the organization can implement it. After they implement it, you can also see 6 months later what was the impact of it. So this is one of the things I'm just trying to tell you in a rudimentary way how we started it, right? But it became very complex, too much like, so much like you can say, even the complex or most complex procedures that happen, like knee replacement or a heart procedure or things like that, everything you can actually share in the community so that other doctors or other communities elsewhere in the world can also pick it up and implement it. So this is a kind of you can say it's a knowledge sharing system, expertise, best practices, just name it, right? So it became bigger and bigger. So much that, we created something called the healthcare innovation indicators, because over time we had implemented in so many hospitals all over the world. So we had this, with studying the history of data and all that. So we came up with something called healthcare innovation indicators. That means if a hospital ticks against these 40 parameters, then you can say this hospital is innovative. If not, you have those gaps, say 10 gaps you have, then they have to work on addressing those gaps. So this is a simple example, right? So what we do is we create an ecosystem. So take, for example, a healthcare ecosystem. What is it? It is a hospital of course, the government, public regulators and whatnot. Then you have your universities, research institutions, startups, the large industry like the Gs of the world, and so on. So you bring everybody together on one platform so that, like I said, internally the challenges are there and you run it and get the ideas from the employees. You can also run it outside, which means the patients, kith and kin, and vendors and others in the ecosystem can also participate, and they can give their ideas, and the best ideas can be implemented. So I'm just touching upon that. So similar to that, we built a community to connect startups and corporate, where the corporate and SMEs give the problem statements, and the startups, researchers, and scientists anywhere in the world can apply, and they'll be taken through 5 levels of filter. The last stage is the publication of the top 100 ranking. That is why the name 100 Open Startups. 100 to indicate top 100 ranking. It is sector agnostic ranking. Open to indicate open innovation and startups. So that is basically the secret behind 100 Open Startups title.
That's really cool. I think it is going to be a really great platform, because here in India we have such indigenous and innovations coming up from even such people whom you would not expect, because there is a problem solving, I think, technique or problem solving attitude in an Indian. We generally sometimes go for a jugaad, that is a workaround, or sometimes we give such great ideas through which the problem can be really addressed. So I think it is really great, and I hope you are getting good ideas from Indian startups as well as people from outside India.
Good point you brought up. Here I want to also say the startup failures, right? So we also address that problem, because you see, there is 93% failure rate today. The entrepreneurship activity all over the world, 93% of the startups are doomed to fail. Okay, so when we analyzed what are those reasons, you can say scaling up too fast, and then selling off their equity too early, too fast, and etc. Right? There are many like that. Okay. One of the chief reasons, almost 60% of the failures in the 93%, is due to product and solutions that are not required by the market. So the entrepreneurs, what they do, they build solutions and products in their enthusiasm, and then they look for problems. So this is a bad approach. Yes, solutions looking for problems will never work. So which is why we turned it on its head, because we are all entrepreneurs. What we did, we said first step should be a problem definition. Sure. This should be a problem solving approach. Yes. The problems are given first, and then in the ecosystem, people solve it. That is the best approach, because then there's a greater validation, because against a problem, you're applying a solution, yes, and then, find ways to collaborate and co-create. So that is the way we have designed the program.
That's really great, because I think problem solving approach has to be there. So I think there has to be some solution for a problem, rather than we have devised the solution and we don't have any problem or any takers for that in the market. As you Correct. Said, 60% is a huge number. If so many people are, starting something and then there are failures, I think this should be taken as lessons by different other people, other startups. Because we generally always read success stories, but I think failures are also very much important, because in your entrepreneurship, you never know what is going to click and what not.
Correct. Agree with you.
You are involved in various startups initiatives in India and worldwide as a mentor and jury, a few global startup programs, and among them is the 100 Open Startups. So do you think that India can be put on the world map with respect to innovation and bright minds?
Absolutely. So this is one of the reasons we run a number of challenges, right? And the concluding finale of our 100 Open Startups is something called the Open Innovation Week. And so the Open Innovation Week is where the startup can find business and investments. So this is like you can say, it's the grand finale of every cycle. 13 cycles we've completed. Oh. So I would say, the startups can build a solution, try to get some traction, few customers in India, and then nearly perfect it. After that, they are ready to go on a global scale, and we help them to go global by connecting them with the corporate who become their partners elsewhere in the world. And then they will take them to market. It's a go-to-market strategy with the startup and the corporate together. And sometimes, right, the corporate themselves will become their customers. So this is an ideal situation, right, where they pay for the IP or their product solution, whatever. So this is one of the ways we are helping the ecosystem. We are helping the innovation, the cycle to continue. So this is also very important to convey here. So when we started it, I can tell you that was in 2015. We found the number of startups that were trying to scale were very few, right? That is because the ecosystem was very nascent and was still developing and all that. So if you see 5 years later, what has happened is there's a lot of awareness. Yes. There's so much incentives. There's so much grant given by the government. So you see, all these are important for contributing to the innovation ecosystem and also to the sustainability of the innovation ecosystem. I would like to say one word about it is that we are looking at the wheel of innovation to continue, where the investors as well as the corporate, the government, everybody plays a role in pushing that idea or that entrepreneur to the next level and next orbit, so to say, right? So you keep on moving from one level to the other, and then finally, either you can find an exit or merge with a big company, or you can also go for an IPO. So there are many ways to get an exit, and then it's all about growing and growing after that. So I'm hoping that in the days ahead, because of all these various activities we do and the initiatives we have implemented, it is going to contribute to the sustainability of the innovation ecosystem. Because see, the early stage investors have to get an exit. That has not happened. In India, it is very difficult. We see most people invest money and then they never get the money back. So this is not a good thing. Yes. And so what should happen is that
you make money and then you exit and invest in some other good startup. I think there are so many startups who need funding, but I think it is not practiced in India. People stick to those companies. Do you think what is the psychology behind that? I mean, investors generally.
Yeah, so I can say it's this intellectual laziness, because people think that you invest into something and it will grow on its own. But most investors, right, if you call these angel investors and the later stage investors who come, they play an active role, right? But sometimes the early stage investors don't have a view. They just think they put the money in and the startup will grow. It is not so. You have to also be actively involved in helping the startup to grow, and that in terms of mentorship, guidance with your knowledge and expertise. So ideally, again, coming to the healthcare. So it's, let us say, somebody who has been through a journey of building a hospital or some healthcare based company or SME or service or whatever. So that person should become a mentor to a startup in healthcare, and that is in the adjacency or in the same business. That is going to add value to that particular SME or a big company, right? So then what happens? The knowledge and expertise can be then shared with that startup, and they can gain on that knowledge and then accelerate the growth, so that they don't have to go through all the pains that the mentor or the angel investor started with. Yes. So, that is how the value addition happens. It's just not investing the money, but you have to handhold them all the way to the market.
Very true. Recently, you were a judge at the Unicorn Battle Online Asia Health Tech on September 15th, 2020. So how was your experience?
Oh, it was a phenomenal experience. We had nearly 25 plus investors were there throughout. At the beginning, of course, there were more, but throughout the event, there were almost 25 investors, who stayed on, and we could experience some of the greatest innovations across Asia. It's not only from India, but it was all over Asia, and it was phenomenal.
You have worked with corporates, been an entrepreneur and an investor. So which is the role which you have enjoyed the most, and why? Because you have worn different hats. So which one is the most enjoyable and most comfortable?
I can easily say, right, the greatest joy comes for a person when you are learning. So, you're constantly learning something and then you are trying to implement your knowledge into something. And sometimes, you have to also unlearn what you learned in your corporate job, right? So what happens is the greatest joy comes when you create something. So that is, I can say, in other words, the entrepreneurship activity that you are or anyone else does is the greatest reward because you have created something
Yes.
rather than working on somebody's shadows.
True.
So if you're working for a big company, right, they have already created a legacy, they already created a big name, they're a big brand. What else you can do, right? And you also know this because the day you leave, they don't care after that, right? So till you're attached to an XYZ company, you are everything for them, you are promoting the brand, etc. But the moment you leave or they ask you to leave, you're nobody.
True.
And so that is where the reality dawns on you that why did I put all my time and effort? On the other hand, if you're created on your own something, at least there's a legacy that you leave behind, and you can be proud about it later in your life when you're retired. So I would say this is what the greatest joy, definitely, when you create something, when you become an entrepreneur.
Yes, it has its own hardships, but the joy and the satisfaction and the those things are really, really not worth of anything. I mean, they are worthy, and it is like it cannot be compared with any money you get from all these big corporate firms.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So,
So any day, right? Any day you creating something is different from, you working for somebody, right? You're following somebody's dictates, you're following certain procedures that is already set, and there's nothing much you can do there. You can already put effort to bring some business maybe. So there are some things that you can do, but that is not as rewarding as you creating something and building like I said, right? A startup that creates great impact for the society.
So it was really, really great talking to you, Varad. I think you have some great works for this startup initiatives and also the incubation program, which you just talked of. I think we need people who can actually just not put fundings, but also handhold the startup and the entrepreneur to go to market and actually visualize what he has dreamt of and make it turn into a reality. So thanks so much, Varad, for
Absolutely.
coming to Medicircle and sharing your
Thank you
insights.
so much. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure sharing my experiences over the years, and I hope the audience can gain from it. And if there are any Q&A questions, for example, I'm happy to answer them.
Uh, no, not really anything at the moment, but yes, I think my readers would really enjoy this piece of information and the 100 Open Startups program also. So it was really, really great talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you also. Thank you for the opportunity.
Most welcome.